Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. This is the second episode for the 14th day of December 2016. Happy Wednesday. I've got several articles here for you. The first one is off of Liberty Writers News, and it says, Breaking. Trump just picked his Secretary of State. Liberals everywhere are pissed. Donald Trump has announced that Rex Tillerson will be his Secretary of State. He did so on Tuesday morning via his Twitter. If you didn't know, Rex Tillerson is CEO of ExxonMobil. Rex Tillerson will make a great choice. Leave him a comment below and hashtag share this if you can't wait to see what Rex does for America, the article reads. It says, Lord, give this man a blessing below in the comments, y'all. Let's make Rex Tillerson blessed to be among friendly Trump voters. Here's the 5 reasons that Rex Tillerson is a great choice for Trump's Secretary of State. Rex is a killer negotiator and has negotiated with other countries and even the U.S. government. As Secretary of State, someone that negotiates well. Number 2, Rex has management experience. According to Forbes, he is chief executive of $370 billion global economy, and he has operations in 50 countries. Compared to most of our politicians, Tillerson has much better management experience. Number 3, Rex has work ethic. Rex Tillerson has worked for Exxon since 1975. He's made it one of the most profitable companies in the world. We need his work ethic to make this country better. Number 4, energy independence. Liberals are lying that Rex Tillerson will be bad for the environment. They are only basing this argument on the fact that he is an executive at an energy company. Exxon has led the field in exploration of alternative energy. Number 5, loyalty. Rex Tillerson is going to be loyal to Trump. There is nothing in his history to suggest that he would betray the American people. Next article is off of Liberty Writers News, and it states, who Trump just picked moments ago to run the economy is going to piss the liberals off. Much that won't piss the liberals off right now, but okay. It says Donald Trump has just announced his pick to head National Economic Council today. It's the highest economic job in the country. Will be leading the National Economy, or try that again, the National Economic Council. He is best known as a market expert and the best that there is when it comes to the economy. Is riling some critics, such as Senator Bernie Sanders, who, like Trump, ran on an anti-establishment candidate, or ran as an anti-establishment candidate. Sanders tweeted, it's called a rigged economy, and this is how it works. As we all know, Trump has a method to everything that he does. This is like chess to him. We will see where things end up, but I have the utmost confidence in our president-elect. And the next article that I have, the freethoughtproject.com. And Hamster has to catch up to me here. Let's give him a shot at this. Poor little hamster. All right. This says Trump's pick to head Department of Energy is a board member of the company behind DAPL, Dakota Access Pipeline, for anybody who's not familiar. President-elect Donald Trump has chosen Rick Perry, a sitting board member of the company responsible for constructing the Dakota Access Pipeline, for Secretary of Energy. While corporate media immediately criticized the choice as a troubling, particularly given the former governor of Texas once sought to eliminate the same department, Perry's position on the board of directors of Energy Transfer Partners should not be downplayed. It's been widely rumored that the president-elect plans to remove all obstacles to the completion of the Dakota Access Pipeline, and a brief Rick Perry's involvement with the project evidences a high degree of truth to those rumors. Construction of the Dakota Access technically on hold following a reversal by the Army Corps of Engineers to issue the easement necessary for the pipeline to run under the Missouri River's Lake Oahe Reservoir, source of drinking water for the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, until a full environmental impact study can be performed. Energy Transfer Partners, however, immediately balked and vowed to continue constructing the pipeline without rerouting it from its current course. And unconfirmed reports indicated that the company would or is doing so and plans to pay fines for ignoring the CE denial of easement. With the project already fought with controversy, ETP quashed momentary celebrations by those opposed to the project and refocused scorn against billionaire CEO Kelsey Warren and his company. Perry's status as ETP board member expected to be a point of contention during confirmation hearings for his appointment to the DOE, but his ties to the Dakota Access Pipeline project have a decidedly crucial aspect he appears to have forgotten. 2015, while facing 2 state-level felony charges for abuse of power that were later dismissed, Perry landed a spot on EPT's board, a position not deemed suspicious due to the Texans' healthy relationship with the oil and gas industry. In retrospect, it should have raised eyebrows. Perry's place on the board did not prove conflict of interest. ETP had to state its filing with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. There are no arrangements or understandings with the partnership or any other persons pursuant to which Mr. Perry has appointed of Energy Transfer Partners, LLC. At this time, the partnership is not aware of any transactions since the beginning of the partnership last fiscal year or any currently proposed transactions in which the partnership to be a participant involving amounts exceeding $120,000 and in which Mr. Perry had or will have a direct or indirect material interest, unquote. There were conflicts of interest, staggeringly so, and Perry and ETP stood to collect a financial windfall from his convenient insider spot with the company, no matter how insidious it seemed to have a big oil proponent on the board of the big oil company. Exactly 1 day prior to his appointment on the board, he appeared in an interview for a local NBC affiliate to champion the pipeline, DAPL's alternate name, and explain to Iowans why they should support construction, a tough sell for many considering this crafty use of an eminent domain to install the pipeline where property owners resisted it. Perry's publicly advocating the pipeline would normally be expected given his long-standing big oil ties, but the timing of the ETP appointment the following day cannot be ignored, especially when further details are scrutinized. Dallas-based Energy Transfer Partners CEO Kelsey Warren contributed massive amounts to Rick Perry's political career, donating $250,000 to his presidential super PAC in 2012 alone. The Thought Project reported previously that wasn't the most controversial contribution. In 2015, Perry raised eyebrows by kicking off his presidential campaign while failing to resign from ETP's board, as would be candidates, ensuring constituents no conflict of interest would arise between their private and public lives. Incidentally, and also, while Perry remained on the board of directors, Warren, working as candidate campaign finance chairman, contributed an astonishing dollars to the candidate's campaign super PACs. Position on ETP board of directors presented an astonishing prime opportunity to ensure the removal of roadblocks Dakota Access Pipeline faced in becoming an absurdly profitable project for investors, the lifting of a ban on unrefined crude in place since 1970s. When ETP officially proposed DAPL, the project was billed as an opportunity to break America's independence on imported foreign oil, but that claim was a flagrant perfidy from the start. Just 1 month after landing the spot on the board of directors, Perry began aggressively lobbying for a piece of legislation called the H.R. 2029, Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2016, but better known as the Leviathan Omnibus Spending Bill, stuffed with rider to Energy Transfer Partners' future profits. Indeed, the bill carried multiple desperate but equally controversial measures, but none as critical to the oil and gas industry and ETP specifically as Section 101's lifting of the ban on exporting unrefined crude. Will transport back in sweet light crude from North Dakota through South Dakota and Iowa to an existing hub in Illinois, where it will then make its way to the Gulf Coast. Originally touted the crude would be used domestically, H.R. 2029, which was signed into law by President Obama in December of 2015, ensured no obligation for the company to keep oil in the United States. Perry, together with the bill's sponsor, House Republican Charles, who also stands to profit handily from the Dakota Access Pipeline, worked tirelessly for its passage. Now, still sitting on Energy Transfer Partners' board of directors, Rick Perry will head the Trump administration Department of Energy with all the flagrant biases and industry and corporate favoritism which paved the way for construction of the pipeline in the first place. Like Warren propping up Perry's career, a foregone conclusion, the appointment will stand. Opposition to the Dakota Access Pipeline by the Standing Rock Sioux and countless others might indeed need a Hail Mary at this late date, but as the movement against unnecessary oil infrastructure benefiting no one but the corporate elite and big bank investors continues to gain momentum, Perry's handiwork cannot be ignored. For dense, abhorrent bill, the export might still be prohibited as it had been since 1975. Fiddling that one section of legislation essentially declared open season for big oil to run roughshod over the land in a free-for-all to ship U.S. crude around the world, and now he will become Secretary of Energy. People say the system is rigged for the rich and connected. This is a prime example of why. Next article I have for you is off of myndnow.com, and it says North Dakota law enforcement sends angry letter to Obama administration. A group of North Dakota law enforcement officials has sent an angry letter to the Obama administration saying they've been abandoned by the federal government. The letter sent by 12 officials, including sheriffs and police chiefs across the state, say federal leaders should be ashamed of their lack of response to dangerous crisis currently on their own soil. The letter goes on to say Washington will be to blame. Protests turn violent again. The letter asked the federal government to support local 100 Border Patrol agents and members of the U.S. Marshals Special Operations Group. They also state that this is a federal problem that's being foisted off on citizens and law enforcement in North Dakota. The letter ends with the group asking level of government to reread their oath of office. Letter from the law enforcement to the president reads as such. Dear Mr. President, as the chief law enforcement officers tasked with managing the ongoing protest actions in North Dakota surrounding the completion of the Dakota Access Pipeline, we are writing to request the federal government begin supporting North Dakota and North Dakota law enforcement with actions, not words. The November 25th letter sent by Colonel Henderson of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to Standing Rock Sioux Tribal Chairman David Archibald, informing him of the closure of the Corps' land to public use as of December 5th was an important and heartening step. But this past Sunday's ruling by the USACE against pipeline easement has done nothing to ease the tension or alleviate the potential for more violence. We cannot express strongly enough our need for financial assistance and additional manpower in order to follow through on the demands made in the November 25th letter and respond to the increasingly dangerous situation developing on federal land owned by the Corps. Specifically, the support of 100 Border Patrol agents and members of the U.S. Marshal Special Operations Group would allow us to maintain effective control over this situation. It is our concern that if we do not receive federal assistance, safety and well-being of law enforcement officers, citizens of the community, and the protesters themselves are at grave risk. After months under siege by near daily protest actions, community sentiment has turned volatile, and there are too many discussions where local groups speak of the possibility to take matters into their own hands. We have repeatedly spoken out against these ideas, but their emotions are running too high, and this situation could lead to tragic consequences. Throughout this process, law enforcement has acted methodically, safely and with restraint. Our only concern is the safety of our state, its citizens, and those who visit, including those who peacefully exercise their First Amendment rights. And yet, instead of embracing us as partners in an effort to defend the rule of law, the federal government has treated us though we are not to be trusted. These protests are a series of federal problems that have been foisted upon the citizens and law enforcement officers of North Dakota. From the very beginning, the opposition during the permitting process and court hearings surrounding this pipeline has been exacerbated by political interference. These protesters have and continue to find sanctuary on federal land, where they stage and plan criminal activities to be executed in our communities. However, every time we have asked the federal government for assistance, they have instead responded with resistance. Despite the sweeping federal inaction, every time the offices of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are protested, who is asked to respond? Local law enforcement. When protesters take over the lobby of the William Guy Federal Building in Bismarck, who is asked to respond? Local law enforcement. Time and time again, we have answered the call to come to the aid of the federal government, but when seeking a reciprocity, we have been completely and utterly abandoned. The strength of this country has always come from the stability of our law, or of our rule of law, a system which no ideology, political interference, or personal opinion is meant to influence. Unfortunately, we have seen just the opposite from our federal leaders during this trying time. It appears they are more responsive to social media rhetoric and misinformation and pleas for assistance from the fellow law-abiding government officials. Federal government response to the events in our community has been appalling, and it is abundantly clear that they have no interest in helping citizens of North Dakota. Frankly, our federal leaders should be ashamed of their lack of response to a dangerous crisis currently in the process of their own soil. This lack of response continues only to serve to empower criminal protesters and support lawlessness in the name of radical political agendas. As our law enforcement officers are forced to spend countless days away from their families, missing holidays, birthdays, and anniversaries, the knowledge government could supply assistance but refuses to do so is unbelievably disheartening. Our officers are facing direct and overt threats, not just to themselves, but to their families, and the lack of intervention or sympathy from the federal government is truly staggering. But it is not just law enforcement who the federal government has abandoned. The true victims are the peaceful citizens of North Dakota. These are people whose right to supply or to simply move freely throughout their community without fear of intimidation, harassment, and violence is being infringed upon. Tasks as simple as going to the bank or allowing school children to play outside during recess have become daily trial for the local communities here. Despite our anger and frustrations with federal officials in Washington, D.C., their local representatives, specifically U.S. Attorney Chris Myers and U.S. Marshal Paul Ward, have been tireless champions of our cause. And the dynamics of what is occurring within their community, and have repeatedly communicated this through their chain of command, are only to be met with resistance and contempt for their concerns. Perhaps those individuals at the highest levels of government who have repeatedly refused our request to help should reread their oath of office recall who and what it is they swore to protect and defend. As law enforcement executives and North Dakotans, we will stand together to uphold the rule of law in our community and will continue to do so regardless of your response or lack thereof. Well, I'm not in North Dakota, so, I'm not witness to what exactly is going on there, but I did see a video of where law enforcement was drenching peaceful protesters that were praying with water cannons in 10-degree weather and shooting them with rubber bullets and lead-filled beanbags. They blew one lady's arm off. They blinded another one and about took one guy's head off with that stuff. And these were peaceful protesters. They weren't armed. They were praying. So I don't know, what this sheriff of Morton County, the sheriff's department there with violence. But so far, I haven't been witness to any that I've seen on any videos. So I'm finding this extremely interesting. The next article that I have is off of Rick Wells US, theconstitutionrising.com, and it says, climate scare declared officially over. Error in model calculations discovered. And this reads, a realist and former advisor to British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, Lord Christopher Monckton, has some major news of a breakthrough discovery he has made in the area of climate science. He's interviewed at the Global Warming and Inconvenient Lie conference in Phoenix, Arizona by Millie Weaver, a reporter for InfoWars. Proud to be able to announce that he and his team of very distinguished professors and doctors of science have discovered a major, significant, substantial error in the way in which the computer modules calculate how much warming they would predict should be happening, he says. Take that error away and there is no longer any climate problem. You might get 1 or 2 Celsius of warming with a doubling of CO2 concentration, but you won't get much more than that, he says. All the suggestions that we're facing some tipping point and suddenly we might see 5 or 6, 10, 12, 13 Celsius of warming for a doubling of CO2, the kind of dramatic figures that have been appearing in some scientific papers, we can now prove that all of those very high forecasts of how much warming we might get are based on an error in mathematics. And we are back down to a maximum of 2, perhaps 2.5 Celsius of warming for a doubling of CO2. Monckton says, I have been looking for this error in the mathematics for 10 years. I have known it was there, but didn't know that the error, what the error was. I just knew they'd made a mistake. He then goes on to explain in some mathematical detail how he knew it, describing himself as a classical mathematician. He also has an announcement regarding a discovery by one of his esteemed colleagues, Professor William Harper of Princeton. Central estimate of global warming has been exaggerated by 40%. When his result is combined with the discovery by Monckton officially that the climate scare is over. That's good to know. The next one that we have here is conservativetribune.com, and it says Trump team asks for identities of DOE employees working on climate change. Those who worship the altar of environmentalism are growing increasingly worried that President-elect Donald Trump, a known climate change skeptic, may undo much of the work they have done over the past 8 years to advance their green agenda at the expense of the American economy. Perhaps adding fuel to those fears was questionnaire circulated within the Department of Energy by Trump's transition team, as reported recently by the New York Times. The 74-point questionnaire, which can be viewed right here, so you can go to this article and click this link if you want to see it, seemed to indicate a significant shift in policy direction and shrinking of the agency, with more of a focus on nuclear energy and move toward the commercialization and privatization of scientific research efforts in the energy field. Tongue-tied. Statists who have hitched themselves to the man-made climate change wagon are especially concerned, as the questionnaire requests the names of employees and contractors who have taken part in international climate change policy conferences and discussions, as well as the documents and emails associated with those discussions. Though it is not usual for an incoming administration to query particular departments and agencies about the current policies in place, it is somewhat atypical to seek identification of specific employees or contractors working on particular issues, which some believe could signal that something of a purge of the department of devoted climate change activist believers may be forthcoming. A lot of these make perfect sense, said Jonathan Levy, former deputy chief of staff of the DOE under President Obama. They have to get their heads around what responsibility they will have and don't have. The thing that's unsettling are the questions that appear to be targeting personnel for doing public service. Going to try to play a video, and we're going to try to shut that down. No ads here. Okay. It remained unclear at this time exactly how the DOE responds to the questionnaire, or if other departments and agencies had received similar queries. Regardless, this certainly looks like first step toward draining the swamp, at least production and climate change adherents in Washington, D.C., who stand in the way of a vital necessity. We now know that climate change is defunct. Yeah. I think it's time to drain the swamp. The next one we have here is off of heatstreet.com, and it says, Loyola professor calls cops on student because he's wearing his police officer uniform. Sheriff sergeant in New Orleans attends classes at Loyola University when he's not working. Professors called the police on Collins himself, apparently because he showed up in class wearing his uniform, which freaked out one of the other students. The incident in a Facebook post that has now been shared over 1,000 times. He starts by mentioning that as a conservative, I have put up with a lot of prejudicial and biased comments directed towards me while attending Loyola University in New Orleans. And the comments funny because the ideals of 18-year-old ultra-socialists frankly are funny, but the latest incident made him sad, he said. Given how busy we have been this past week, including today, I showed up to class late and was still in full uniform because I didn't have time to change, he wrote. Obviously, being in full police uniform, I was armed. Says that a fellow classmate complained to the professor on the uncomfortableness of having an armed police officer in the class, even though he class for 6 weeks, so the student would have known who he was. The professor then called the police, but Collins says he was not privileged to either one of those conversations as they took place behind my back. The professor then approached him and informed him that they had called the police, but the police never came because Collins was perfectly within the law. Collins, who works in the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, points out that his Facebook post that it is incredibly ironic that the reaction to being scared of a police officer is to call the police. He also writes that as a police officer, I feel as though I must hide my profession in order to obtain a fair education. Wow, I can't make this stuff up. Okay, then the final article I have for you here is off of BizPac Review, and it says, classy for Trump's inauguration. No lip-syncing Beyonce. Check out the world-class talent in the works. Could it finally be happening? After much speculation, Donald Trump may have found someone to perform at his inauguration on January the 20th. Trump is reportedly going to ask Andrea Bocelli to take the gig and has been a longtime fan of the Italian tenor, according to the New York Post, page 6. Trump's Trump has a long-standing relationship with Bosley and wants to ask him in person to perform, a source told the Post. The plan is to have acts at the inauguration that are meaningful for Trump, and he's a huge fan of Bosley. The Trump's attended a Free Bosley concert in Central Park in 2011 after the tenor performed at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in 2010. Bosley is scheduled to play at New York Madison Square Garden on Thursday and will be meeting with Trump on Friday to discuss the inauguration, the Post reports. As for now, the crew putting the events of the inauguration day together include Colony Capital mogul Tom Barracks and apprentice producer Mark Burnett, and are remaining tight-lipped about the plans. They are keeping their cards very close to the chest, the source told the Post. One thing is for sure, you won't see Beyonce lip-syncing again this year, as she did during the President Obama's 2013 inauguration. And there are some clips in this of some of performances, if you want to pull this up and take a look at those. As I said, all these URLs are in the description of the video, so you can take a look at them at your leisure and check out some of the things that I have there for you. Next time, have a great day.